Hi everyone, it's Sam here at Model Chili Scale Models, and welcome to part 7 of my Bandai Perfect Grade Millennium Falcon build series. And in this episode I'll be applying the decals and starting the weathering. So I've already started applying the decals to the lower side. As you can see, there's quite a few missing from the sheet already. And in this video I'll be applying the rest of the top surface decals. I won't be showing all of them because, as you can see, there's quite a few to get through. And following on from the previous video, I've given the whole model a very light coat of Tamiya's TS13 Clear, which protects the paint and makes the decals go down a bit easier. And so now I'll finish applying all of the decals. Alright, so to start off the weathering, I'm going to spray on some black soot coming from the engine vents. And according to the reference photos, they sort of go in this direction and in that direction of airflow, coming from both of these tiny vents and then the large main vents. So I'll try and be replicating this as much as possible. And for the colour, I'm just going to use Vallejo's Model Air Black Grey. And now for some of the battle scarring, battle damage. And again, according to the reference photos, it's not actually as heavy as I thought it was. It's a very light colouring around the holes there, and then just a little bit of splattering. So I'm just going to spray a darker grey around those holes and then just brush paint the rest of the weathering on top. Alright, so the next phase of the weathering is applying the chipped paint to all the different coloured panels, and the decals provide a good guide as to where to put the chipping. If I'd used these decals, then of course I wouldn't have to do this because well, the chipping's already there. But I decided to paint on the panels, so I'll be having to apply the chipping myself. And some people in the past have asked why I've painted these instead of using the decals. It's just because from using Bandai decals in the past, I know that these are quite difficult to set, especially on areas like this where there's a lot of raised detail. It takes a lot of coats of microsol and a lot of messing around just to get the decals to settle on all of the raised areas. And also the decals, when you're looking really close, you can see all the ink spots, which kind of bugs me, so I decided to go for painting instead. But of course that means I have to do all the extra work of applying the chipping, but you know, it's all just part of the job. And so for this technique, what I usually do is attack it with a sponge or a brush just to paint on the base coat to apply the chipping, but it's not going to quite work on this model, I don't think, just because of the large areas. If I was to apply blobs of paint onto these panels, it would get pretty obvious. And because I'm following a specific pattern, the random sponge technique isn't going to work either. So what I've decided to do is, I've got this paint stirring tool, just a metal little stirrer with a rounded edge on this end. And so that's not a sharp point but a rounded point, but it's because it's metal, I can gradually scrape away the paint. And I'm doing that for two reasons. One, if you look at the references of the actual studio model, you can see they really attacked it, attacked the paint by scraping it away in a lot of areas. They weren't gentle on this model, they really bashed it around. So I'm going to replicate that by doing the same technique. And 2, it allows me much finer control and it gives the depth of the chipping instead of applying paint on the top. So those are the reasons of doing this technique. And because this is acrylic on a primer layer of a light grey, and under the primer layer is the white grey of the plastic, I can scrape down to the primer, down to the base coat, or down to the base coat first, then the primer, then the plastic, and give different levels of colour just to mix it up a bit and give different depths of chipping. So that's that explained, hopefully. And let's get scraping. So using this decal here as a guide for this, and I can just roughly match the areas that I need to apply the chipping. And I'm not applying too much pressure, I'm just sort of using the weight of my hand. Let's get in there. And so that's to scrape down to the base coat. If I was to press harder, I could scrape down to the primer and then the plastic underneath that. So I've got a bit of room to apply different amounts of pressure. Right, so I mean, it's not going to be 100% matched, but that's just the nature of trying to copy a random pattern. But it's going to be pretty close. And it just means I didn't have to mask any of this beforehand or use the decals when I wanted to paint instead. I mean, this is by no means the only way to do this. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways you could apply or achieve the chipping. But this is the one I went for, so got to stick with it. Alright, so with the chipping completed, by scraping it away, I'm now going to add some of the black spotted chipping, as you can see in these reference photos. So there's some along the front of the cockpit, along here, there's a little bit on the side, here, and up there. It looks like they've scraped away some of the paint to reveal some sort of black underlay, some sort of primer layer, or maybe the colour of the metal or the plastic. There's a bit behind the radar dish as well. And I'm just going to add that just by dabbing on a little bit of black paint. And so now I'm going to start applying the streaking pattern that you can see that's all around the ship, all of the dark grey, black and rust streaks that fall down from the slots in the panels, as you can see on the studio model there. It's a bit less pronounced on the studio model compared to the painting guide, so I might strike a nice balance between the two. Probably lean more towards the studio model like I have been doing. But for that I've tried various different techniques like acrylic paints, oil paints, and I've basically settled on the Tamiya Weathering Master pigments. And so what that allows me to do is just apply bits to the applicator and then draw down a rough line, getting the right spot. And top's going to be a bit difficult because it's pulling towards me, which is always a bit more harder than pushing away, but so I need a general line to go from here and then down like that. And you'll see that's quite rough and thick at the moment, so what I then do is get a bit of acrylic thinner. Well, this is airbrush thinner, it's pretty much the same thing, on the end of a cotton bud. And then I can start to shape this line and sharpen it up a bit. And I can also use the excess that starts to build up on the cotton bud to create more streaks, very subtle ones that go down. I'll just clean that up a bit. Sometimes it takes a few goes, but eventually I get a line that's relatively straight and pointy, and just what I want. So that's basically how I'm applying the streaks, and now I just need to go around the whole ship and apply all the different colours. So I've got soot, I'm using soot, rust, which is kind of a browny rust, and also burnt red for a bit more brighter rust, and oil stain, which is kind of a brownish black. So those are the four colours that I'm going to be using, and it's just a case of working my way around. Alright, so I went ahead and finished all the streaking and did a few more touch-ups. So I sprayed on a little bit more dark grey shaded areas, like along the front of the mandibles, up the sides of the sections of the hull, and a few more little bits and pieces around, a few more black spots, some dirt and some chipping, and it's finally complete. I can't believe I'm saying that. It's been 5 months, I think, since I started this project, and it's just really nice feeling to have it finally done. And I do kind of want to explain my absence lately. I know some people have been asking where I've been and what's been happening, and I've put a few posts up on the community tab and some of my other social media accounts, but I thought I'd just explain a little bit here. I don't want to turn this into my life video, but I thought just a quick explanation would be nice to my viewers. As you know, as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, I have been job hunting, and in the process I also moved out of my old house. I'm just staying with family at the moment, so I no longer have a dedicated modelling area. This desk is sharing space with my computer, so I have to shuffle things around when I want to do different jobs. And also, the house being occupied by other people, it's not always a good time to do recording or anything like that because there's noises and random things happening. So it's been difficult, but I've mainly focused on doing the Falcon, and I eventually did find another job, which is quite exciting, working in the video games industry for a small indie developer here in Christchurch. I'm their QA manager, and yeah, so that's been a pretty exciting, challenging, and a massive change from my old job, which was managing bank websites, to now working in video games industry. So that's yeah, it's been quite a change, and a lot of my energy has been focused on that, obviously, and also doing the Falcon. So I just really haven't had a lot of time to, or ability to, do a lot of recording. So that's why this video has been kind of all over the place. So I do apologise if I've missed any steps that you've really wanted to see, but it was just one of those things where life just got in the way, and it was something that I really did not expect when I started this project. But I'm glad I finally got it done, and it didn't take too long. I wish it didn't take quite as long as it did, but hey, you know, that's life. It's done now. And now I've just got to pack it up as securely and safely as possible and send it to my client overseas. So I hope he is looking forward to that. But yeah, so let's have a closer look at the Falcon. Alright, so starting at the cockpit, as you can see here, there's a lot of chipping and scarring and staining. That really closely resembles the studio model, so I'm really happy with how that came out. It really does look quite bashed and worn. And the black chips along the front came out pretty nice. And then the lights all lit up inside. So that's looking really nice, especially in person. And when the lights are quite dark, it really glows out from in there. Luke and Obi-Wan are a bit hard to see, but that just depends where the light is hitting. In there, and then you've got all the staining and decals along the side walls there. Bit of chipping on some of the decals. It was just with a bit of paint added over the top. And there you can see all the lights glowing from underneath. Again, that looks really nice when the lights are low and the boarding ramp is down and the light shines out. I've taken dozens and dozens of photos, so keep an eye out on Facebook or Instagram or my Patreon page where they will eventually end up. There's more than enough to go around, so I'll put a link to those in the video description when those go up, so you can see lots of angles and close detail. And now to the engine deck, where there's some nice rust and spotting going on, matching the studio model. And the staining, which I have recently discovered after doing a lot of research on the studio model, that's the exhaust does blow straight backwards in the line of airflow, not a radial angled pattern as I previously thought. Because what's happening is there's exhaust stains coming out of these small vents, which is blowing backwards. But because they're on an angle from the main vents, from a distance it kind of looks like they're all spreading outwards, whereas in reality they're all kind of blowing back straight in a parallel direction. So it gives the illusion that it's spreading outwards. And I think they kind of stuffed that up in the Solo movie with Lando Calrissian's version of the Millennium Falcon. Staining is very clearly going in a radial, non-parallel direction, which I think is a mistake. Whoever designed that model or built it in 3D thought, as I previously did, that all the staining went in different directions, but it actually doesn't. So I just thought that was quite interesting. It's just looking at closer detail here. I think I pointed out on one of my photos that this detail here is just an entire upper hull of a Jagdpanther German tank destroyer model kit that they've just stuck in there and detailed up, so I thought that was quite interesting. And some of the detail on the rear left side. Some of the hatches that come out the top, docking hatches, docking port, and then some of the battle damage. And then back down the front side, all the lovely detail that's in there, all the random rust staining bits and pieces. And the radar dish, which of course is fully posable. And a closer look at the quad cannons, again fully posable, and the gun bay inside, and you can actually see right through out the other side of the window once you've got light showing through. It's a pity the kit doesn't have internal lighting in the area, but I suppose that's something you could add if you were so inclined. Now zooming into the boarding ramp, which I've just installed. And you can see up into the corridor at the back, which is all lit up. So that's looking pretty good. So as for the stanza that comes with the kit, you can put it on a nice angle here, or you can put it flat on top. But I really don't like it. It feels really flimsy, and the Falcon does not feel stable on it at all. It kind of plugs into the front landing gear port at the front, but at the back it just kind of rests on the hull. And flat it might be okay, but on an angle, you know, the slightest bump or even here during an earthquake, this thing is just going to come flying straight off. So I'm really not sure if that's if I've done it right, or I'm pretty sure I have. I followed the instructions, and it sits there, and you can wiggle it around a little bit, and it's not falling off. But like I said, you know, if someone came along and bumped it, or there was a big shake, this thing's just going to come sliding off and hit the table. So I'm really not happy with that. I suppose you could modify it to secure it a bit better, but then I think you would lose the ability to take it off and on quite easily. So, yeah, I think they could have made it a bit better, but I'm not sure how other people have found it. I've not really heard much in the way of complaints about it, but maybe it's just me being in a shaky island. It's something that I think about maybe too much. So, yeah, it does its job, but again, it's not quite as secure as I'd like it. So here's a quick view from underneath. As you can see there's the port with the landing gear where the stand slots into, but you can see the light shining through there, so that's not covered. But you can cover the rear landing gear bays. And some of the engine detail from underneath, which is just full of vehicle parts and tank parts and engine parts. It's a real delight if you're familiar with other model kits. And there's a bit of an Easter egg. There's a decal there, that red and black one. It says something like "Drive Safe." That was actually on the studio model, or "Drive Safely" or something like that. It's a bit hard to read. The decal on the instruction sheet is actually easier to read than the actual decal, so that's quite funny. And some of the battle scarring from underneath. And the strange kind of shotgun pattern of black spots that was on the studio model. That was quite fun to put on. Alright, so there it is, done and dusted. And I hope you've enjoyed that little tour. And if you've been with me since the start, then I hope you've enjoyed watching the build from start to finish. well, mostly from start to finish. I know there's been a few gaps, but that's just the way it goes. But overall, it's been a really enjoyable build. It's just been one of those kits that I haven't got bored or tired with like some of my other big projects. Just the fact that because Bandai is just so flawless in their execution that the kit just fell together in some parts. In some parts there's been a few gaps, but that's just the nature of it being a push together kit and the fact that there's interchangeable parts and removable panels, so there's going to be a few gaps here and there. But overall it's just been perfect, I think. Well, except for the stand. I'm still not really happy with that, but that's just preference, I think. And as I mentioned, there's going to be dozens and dozens, probably, maybe hundreds of photos of this up on my Facebook and Instagram accounts, so I'll put links to those in the description so you can go and check those out and leave comments there or questions if you have any. And yeah, so I don't think there's much more to say really without rambling on, so again, thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the build series, and I hope you like the final result. And as for me, my next project is definitely going to be something a lot smaller and a lot simpler. As I mentioned before, my setup isn't ideal at the moment, so building something small and simple will be a lot easier to achieve and to record at the same time. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully it won't be too long. But until then, thank you for watching and take care.